This video is a little bit different from what I normally do, as it's solely based on an article that isn't substantiated by much, if any, evidence at all. Still, the story's been covered by Bleacher Report, ESPN, and pretty much everyone, so figured I'd throw my hat in the ring.
What the Kansas player?
The story is told, and lots of people share my opinion, with some going as far as calling the original article a tabloid hit piece. In this video, I'm very careful to distinguish between the few actual facts we have, separating those from my opinions and theories. But because the information in the article is so one-sided and there is so much information missing, those opinions and theories come more frequently than they have, at least in my last few videos. There's a link to the original article down below, so believe whatever you want, but take this video with a grain of salt. Reading this story for the first time, I felt like I was watching Shutter Island or Fight Club, because I can't rely on Caperton's rendition of the story. I don't know what to believe and what.
I'm already gonna say, I'm kind of sad, because I'm a really sensitive guy when it comes to sounds. I notice shit like really easily. He's cutting a lot in this video. That's why there's no face cam. This man is cutting every 3 seconds, bro. If you listen, you can hear it. I might have just ruined this video for you too, but if he keeps cutting every 3 seconds, I can't watch that.
What not to believe, because there's no evidence, no injuries.
Oh, you just
know how it started.
literally.
This dude keeps up, because I can't rely on Caperton's rendition of the story.
Talk
I don't know
himself.
what to believe and what not to believe, because there's no evidence, no injuries. We don't know how it started, and this dude keeps passing himself off as this innocent angel that has no fault. So since it's obvious that we don't have the
Keeps
entire
talking over
story,
himself,
your boy has
come on.
formulated a theory, and I ain't did one of these in a long time. Y'all remember I used to do the theories? Today's video was sponsored by Keeps. Even great Warren Moon
my finger
talked about
slipped. God
this.
damn it.
You hear it all the time. In order to maximize results, the team needs to operate as one unit. Now, this is much easier said than done, especially once you consider the fact that a football locker room is the ultimate melting pot of different cultures and backgrounds, different motivations, different goals. In an ideal situation, all these individuals come together. They bond in the hot sun, running gassers and two-a-day practices. We may never agree on politics, but we can agree that the strength and conditioning coach is a jackass who obviously hates each and every one of us equally, and I know damn well we can all drink to that. After all, you spend more time with these teammates than your own family, and if you run into them years later, there's no awkwardness. You walk up and share memories like no time at all has passed. You've transcended the things that separate you. In an ideal situation, you truly become family. But today's video is about a non-ideal situation. A situation where you and your teammates don't become family. Instead, you become enemies, oppositions, locked inside an intra-squad beef that resembles more of a prison ward than a football team. Let's just cut to it. What happens when a college football player thinks his teammates are trying to kill him? Stick around to find out. Cue the Wayne.
I'm curious. What would you do? I don't even know what the fuck I would do.
Before we jump in, it's time for a word from today.
Hey, my finger. Oh no, my finger slipped. Stop. Stop.
Pharmacy.
Stop.
As keep low. Shout out to from basically playing the game as a way out. We've all seen those
I
stories.
stop eating while I'm
over and
streaming.
over
My
and
finger
over.
just
But
slips all the time.
Lots of today's best NFL players grew up with the luxury of not needing to play for money. And Caperton Humphrey was looking to become one of those guys. In high school, dude may have been well on his way. His dad is a very successful entrepreneur, so he never had any
You
financial
seen that
hardship.
dude just
He didn't
fall.
play the game as a way out, so he had to tap into a
trash.
different
They
motivation. Some could
trash.
even argue that playing while not needing the money could suggest
Oh my
an
God,
even
they
deeper
suck.
passion for the game.
Not
That's
them,
a
but the
really
teams that played
complex
against.
topic for another day. As a junior, the 6'2", 200-pound running back rushed for 1,345 yards while averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. The following year, he upped that total, rushing for 1,700 yards as a senior, which earned him second team All-State honors.
That's not bad.
Caperton wasn't a great player, but he was a really good one. He accepted a scholarship offered at Eastern Kentucky, which is a smaller FCS school, and his first year there he saw playing time on special teams in every game that season. In those 11 games, he recorded 12 tackles and seemed to be on a pretty good pace to have his role increase the following year. So this next part is a little weird to me.
He's
After
playing
that freshman
linebacker?
season, Caperton decides to transfer up to the University of Kansas as a walk-on. I've done these stories for over 5 years, story after story after story. I've seen plenty of players transfer to a lesser school for more playing time. Maybe they got in trouble at the larger school. We've covered lots of JUCO players moving up to D1, but I have never seen a player started in FCS school, play pretty much strictly on special teams, and then transfer up to a larger school the very next year. I don't think I've ever seen it. That's exactly what Caperton did. According
the
to
big
the story,
deal?
he sent this tape off from his limited play in Eastern Kentucky, and the Kansas Jayhawks called him 3 days later. Turns out his dad had a friend who worked in Kansas's compliance department. He probably pushed the tape through, but what's the point of having resources?
Probably,
if you're not
yeah,
gonna use
definitely.
them? Regardless to how it happened, Caperton got the call and was brought in as a preferred walk-on. Now, Kansas may have seen what he did at running back in high school or his limited tape.
They don't know
at
how to
Eastern
tackle.
Kentucky, but they were more interested in
He's
the
not that
skill set
nice.
he showed as a kid.
He's just a little big guy.
Caperton Humphrey was actually a 9-time champion as a youth wrestler. He
Oh,
was physical,
shit.
he had great balance, and he wasn't at all afraid to use it. He was also interested in moving back to the offensive side of the ball, so Kansas figured he'd be perfect for their fullback/H-back role. When he signed up for the role, I'm pretty sure Caperton thought he'd get the ball at least occasionally, but that honestly rarely ever happened. Mostly his job was to clear lanes for the running backs, and apparently dude was pretty damn effective at it, with his best day coming versus West Virginia, where his blocking helped lead to the Jayhawks running for a total of 367 yards as a team. That was also his first start, and dude would go on to eventually earn a scholarship.
first start?
So maybe that weird decision to transfer up was the right call after all, or so it seemed. By 2019, things were going really well for Caperton. He transferred to a larger school. He was now a scholarship player. He even had a dope ride that his dad bought with D1 Baller on the license plate. But an argument with a couple of teammates would change everything.
Seems like one of those
As
guys
this
that's got a
argument
daddy, you
would
know?
escalate further
My daddy
than
will do it for
anybody
me.
could have ever imagined. Some time after the argument, Caperton was driving along when he noticed his back tire wobbling in his side mirror. He pulled over to see what was going on, and apparently his lug nuts in his tire had been loosened. They were so loose, in fact, he was able to rotate them with his hand alone. Now, this was maybe a few days after the argument with his teammates, and in Caperton's mind, he knew exactly who was responsible. What was this argument about again? Like, seriously, for you to just leap to that conclusion, that argument had to be pretty ugly. Maybe some
Yeah.
lines was crossed? Had to be, right? The only person even claiming to know how it started is this one random guy on Twitter who said this: Sam, looks like Jesse did a poor job on his KU hit piece. Caperton Humphrey had racist messages on his social media with the N-word, and now has deleted them or blocked access. He started the arguments. Jesse, the guy who wrote the article, I presume, did not even check his social media. Just a KU hit piece. Now, like everything else in this video, you gotta take that with a grain of salt. And because this is one random person on Twitter, I didn't make this a part of the main story thread. Still, I feel if I didn't include it in the video, people would spam it in the comments section or say I missed it or something like that. So I didn't miss it. I definitely saw it. But like everything else in the story, we cannot prove that it's actually true. Either way, he picked
The
up
Wayback
the phone,
Machine?
called the police, reported the incident. See,
Did he not
took it
try
as
using
if
the
this
Wayback
was
Machine?
A message from them, a potentially
What?
life-threatening message
Come
that
on,
said,
Funmo.
yo, don't mess with us, bro. And if he didn't notice quick enough, he could have hopped on the highway and that could have been an ugly situation, right? So he gave the name of the teammate he thought was responsible to the police. There was no evidence. We've all seen lug nuts loosen on their own. Not as loose as he says his was, but still. They can be loosened by the weather. Maybe they wasn't tightened up correctly the last time he had his tire changed.
Nah,
Despite
if
all
they're
of
literally
that,
like,
you have to
you
admit,
could
lug
loosen
nuts
them with your
being
hand,
that
somebody
loose, like, a
sabotaged
week
you.
after his argument, if anybody else was in the same shoes, there's a pretty good chance the thought would at least cross your mind. So Caperton internalized this incident as an attempted murder, or to quote him, a life-threatening situation. There was no questions in his mind, and he wanted the people he assumed were responsible to be punished. But
Facts.
there was zero evidence that the
Yep.
lug nuts were as loose as he said, and there was definitely no evidence that somebody had tampered with his car. Was he just being
That's true.
paranoid? Maybe spiteful and wanting to get back at the guys he'd argued with? Or did one of his teammates actually want him dead? Dude continued to be at odds with those same players before workouts and in the locker room. Caperton had been texting his family friend who worked in a compliance office. He wanted to make these guys pay for what they did and for what he thought they did. So he told this guy in the compliance office that one night he saw out the window two of the players who he was at odds with dealing drugs. Now look, I don't know what this locker room was like, but based on the locker rooms that I've been in, I have to imagine that Caperton would have placed himself on the bad side of a lot of people in that locker room at this point. Why would he do wrong? Well, he already called the police on his teammates even though he had no proof that they actually did anything wrong besides getting into an argument with them. Something that happened on a football team like
I'm just gonna say, usually the culture in a football team like that is gonna be very tight-knit community, you know what I mean? And usually when you have a community like that, you don't bring in the police, you know what I'm saying? So usually it can be resolved in-house. And the fact that he had to bring in the ops with no evidence,
like every single day. Most of the dudes on the team not gonna trust you after that. Like seriously, for your own teammate to bring the police into a situation on a football team, like that's a different type of betrayal. Like who does that? There's people out there like, that's not cool, bro. Complete strangers is one thing. On the football team, when there is no proof that anybody's actually trying to do something to you, you don't call the cops, bro. Then you on the phone texting your dad's buddy in the compliance office. Like every time you have an issue, you run into the authority figures to handle it for you. On a football team, you gotta handle those problems on your own. It's fine, people will respect you for it. So fair or unfair, I would never trust this guy after that. So to test that theory, I reached out to a couple of sources to basically ask how dude was viewed in the locker room. And while this obviously doesn't mean every player felt this way, one source said dude was pretty shaky, not the type of guy you'd want to hang around. See what I'm saying? And to some of y'all that might sound tough, but listen, the man has a new accusation every week and still has no proof. Not to mention these accusations are the type that get you locked up for a long time. These are very, very serious allegations. Still, we gotta be fair. Let's look at both sides. If you truly believe somebody made an attempt on your life, most people would stop at nothing to eliminate that threat. If the lug nuts were truly as loose as he said they were, I can't really blame him for thinking somebody tampered with his vehicle. He didn't know how else to handle the situation, so he did what he was trained to do. He called the police. I sat down and I really thought about how would I have handled this situation, and basically I'd have handled it the same way I handled similar situations during my time in college. You have to call a dude out in front of the team, not the coaches, but in front of your teammates. Then y'all could either talk, fight, strap up the pads, however you want to handle it, handle it. I realize not everybody's gonna agree with that line of thinking, but you have to remember the context. College football teammates. In that setting, I feel you handle it that way. Now, outside of that setting, it is a completely different story, but I'm saying when you're on a team, that's what I'm saying. After two warriors go at it and kind of temper that testosterone, you can usually have a reasonable and respectable convo with another guy as you gain respect for each other throughout y'all's battle. But once he called the cops, it was all over with as far as a peaceful
It's
outcome.
over.
Now on the other side, if you were constantly being accused by the same person and you know you didn't actually do anything, how would that make you feel? Attacked? Like this dude has a vendetta
100%.
against you and he's doing everything in his power to basically ruin your life. Now, if you're guilty and you actually did this stuff, you tried to ruin your own damn life. But I'm saying if you didn't actually do it, and we don't know if the person did or not because again, there is no proof. So if you didn't actually do it and you kept getting hit with these accusations, you
Fuck
really
is
start
that,
to
bro?
hate this
Cut it
guy,
off.
even if you didn't before this whole incident. Eventually, the players accused were brought into the coach's office and questioned. Unsurprisingly, shortly after that, a fight breaks out in practice between Caperton and one of the guys, but it's a football practice fight and gets broken up before anybody can really get their true aggression off. Shortly after that, Caperton sends his roommate to talk to the guys. This was the message he passed on according to the article. Leave me alone and we'll leave you alone, while remaining quiet about some drug offenses I saw out the window. And again, bro, Caperton is supposed to be the victim in this story, but here he is again with these sneaky little threats. Also, his dad was in his apartment at the time he sent that message, so there's a chance that his dad had kind of placed a battery in his back, meaning he got a little bit braver because his dad was there. About 10 minutes later, he says there were about 10 people banging on his door, including the 4 teammates he was now at odds with. Now, if you're the teammates and you really want to talk, you only need 2 or 3 people. Like, don't go alone because that's how you get jumped. But if you pull up 10 deep, they're calling the police, bruh. every time. While in the apartment, the two sides argued back and forth. This is when they accused Caperton of being racist. Maybe they felt he was constantly just making assumptions and false accusations due to preconceived notions or prejudice, or maybe they just threw out an empty accusation of their own to attempt to damage his credibility. It happens both ways all the time, no concrete proof on either side. Unsurprisingly, the teammates finally left the apartment after Caperton and his family called the police. Cape's girlfriend at the time, his ex-girlfriend now, said that the guys threatened Caperton, Caperton's dad, and his little brother who was also there. But if they was arguing back and forth for 20 minutes, I'm pretty sure threats were flying all over the place from both sides. And right now we only have
100%.
one side of this story, and reading that side of the story, Caperton doesn't admit any fault. Like, every single thing that happened is on the other side.
That's how
it's somebody else's fault. And when that happens, I tend to just not believe it, right? I can't remember a single bad situation in my life where I couldn't have done something different to make the situation better. Even if the other person was tripping, even if they was out of line, there's always something I could have done. Like, if y'all haven't seen my college football story video, I don't
know about that.
Go watch that video. Throughout the video, I talk about, my coach was tripping here. I was tripping here, though. I shouldn't have did this, and I damn sure shouldn't have did this. I was in the wrong mindset. But then they did this. Like, tell the
but when
whole
somebody
story,
coming at you,
once
you
the
can't
police
really
get
do
there,
nothing.
Caperton tells them that he thought he saw a gun in one of the boys' sweatpants. Yet another accusation.
Oh my God.
Let's run him back. First, he said the guys loosened up the lug nuts on his car, but he didn't have any proof. Then he said he saw the same guy selling drugs at the moment he happened to look out of his window, and now he's saying that there was maybe a gun in the dude's pants. He's trying to get these dudes jammed up. He's doing everything in his power to do that. And listen, all these things are possible. They are. But it's also possible that this dude is making stuff up. And guess what? That also happens every single day. Bro, reading this story for the first time, I felt like I was watching Shutter Island or Fight Club, because I can't rely on Caperton's rendition of the story. I don't know what to believe and what not to believe, because there's no evidence, no injuries, we don't know how it started, and this dude keeps passing himself off as this innocent angel that has no fault. So since it's obvious that we don't have the entire story, your boy has formulated a theory. And I ain't did one of these in a long time. Y'all remember I used to do the theories? So taking into consideration all the information we have and trying to account for the many puzzle pieces that either aren't there or don't fit, this part is just my opinion, my theory.
Okay.
Here we go. I think Caperton watched way too many gangster movies on Netflix, and then after he got into that argument, he just completely overreacted. I think he was just my opinion, my theory. Here we go. I think Caperton watched way too many gangster movies on Netflix, and then after he got into that argument, he just completely overreacted. I think he was scared, having not dealt with a lot of different cultures growing up, and he really just did not know how to best handle this situation. So he did what he was trained to do. He called the police. He reached out to his guy in the compliance office. He's trying to handle the problem in the only way he knows how. I think his fear maybe caused him to be a little bit paranoid and unreasonable. And then he gets that syndrome where he fears for his life, and all of a sudden he sees drug deals and guns and sweatpants that may or may not be there. I think the people around him kind of realized this too, and that may explain why no team captain stepped in to squash this beef, because that's normally what happens. I think they maybe tried to calm down the situation, but at that point he was already on 10, and that thing was just going to keep escalating and escalating and escalating. I don't think the coaches took it seriously, because nobody really believed his life was in danger, which is probably why they, quote, swept it under the rug. They probably just didn't care, because it's a small thing that the players should sort out for themselves. Well, I know they kind of got into a little scrap at practice. Again, you can't do it in front of the coaches unless you just want to go head up with pads. If you actually want to throw hands, you're going to have to do that separate from the coaches. Now, the funny part is, based on everything I've read and seen from Caperton, the dude is physically tough as hell. He probably would have won that fight. He is a champion wrestler, okay? So he was physically strong, but I think he was mentally weak. And I think that's what went wrong with this whole situation. So that's just my little theory, but who the hell am I and what the hell do I know? But I'm doing this whole damn video, so I figured I should at least share my thoughts on it. Either way, you won't want to miss what happens next.
Oh, I forgot about the 50K part.
That honestly sounds barbaric from the standpoint of just everyday society. But you have to remember the context, and a football team operates differently than just everyday society. That's just the truth, whether people can handle that or not. So according to the article, Les Miles suggested that they strap on the pads.
All right, no problem,
and work out
Moses.
their
It was good having you.
on the field, full contact, get it all out. Then, like fighters after a boxing match, you gain their respect for your opponent, and y'all finally have an actual conversation for the first time after months of yelling nonsense at each other. Caperton declined. He later said, quote, "I came out of that meeting and I was like, forget this. They don't want to talk to my family. They don't want to do anything to help me. Why sit in misery and fear for my life over something dumb?" Caperton's dad was in constant contact with his friend in the compliance department because he wanted him to intervene, but the compliance guy didn't want to do that because he knew that Caperton would, quote, get labeled as a diva if he did. The compliance guy instead helped negotiate a settlement over text messages. And this is what initially made me interested in this story. I thought I was about to deep dive into this crazy college football scandal that involved the D1 college paying $50,000 of hush money to a player. And while that is technically still true, there was so many other things that didn't add up in the story. And one thing about me, whether people agree with me or not, I think I'm a reasonable and thoughtful person, so because of that, I'm not afraid to be honest. And basically, that's how you got this version of this video, instead of the 10-page version that I originally wrote. So Caperton's dad and the compliance guy negotiate the terms of a preliminary settlement all through text messages. After running it up the chain for official approval, they agreed on a settlement that included a non-disparagement clause, meaning Caperton and his family could not say anything bad about Kansas publicly. Basically, they paid them to go away. They reimbursed the $28,000 Caperton's dad paid in tuition the first year before Caperton was on scholarship. He also continued to receive his monthly stipend, even though he would no longer be attending the school. The roughly $1,300 a month stipend would add up to a little over $18,000 by the end of the agreement. He was also reimbursed 58 cents per mile for the trip back to West Virginia, and they even paid to ship his personal belongings back. They really was trying to get my dude out of there. In total, it was over $50,000 worth of benefits, all to get rid of this player and have him stay quiet. Here's a quote from Caperton's dad. Les Miles and Jeff Long swept this under the rug and tried to buy our silence. This is how they operated while representing Kansas. And he's definitely not wrong. They did try to sweep it under the rug. They did want his son out of there. But is this just another case of a college football program operating sleazily as usual? Or is this a special case where the accuser was actually the problem, as he was constantly hitting his own teammates?
It kind of sounds like that, not gonna lie.
In an attempt to get his way. Now it's
Kind
a
of
little
sounds like he
odd
was just
because
a
they did say that the school tried to write
big-headed
him off and
athlete
they did
who thought he
accept
was a
the
big
money,
shot coming
but
in.
now they're still choosing to go public. Now that may be because they're looking to bring legal action against Les Miles and Kansas athletics. According to Caperton, he began dreaming during his time at Kansas and believed that there could have been a path for him to continue football after college. But since he didn't pursue football or join another team after the situation at Kansas, he blames them for robbing him of the opportunity to continue his football career. His family says the situation changed him. And listen, I'm an empathetic dude and I feel bad for the man because they say he now suffers from depression, attends therapy, and is even taking medication. And I want to take a moment to empathize with Caperton, because if these guys really did make an attempt on his life and then nobody believes you, that would be extremely tough to deal with. So bro, if you happen to catch this video, even though I don't believe everything in your story, only you know how it truly affected you, and I hope you can get past it. Still, when it comes to your accusations that Kansas robbed you of your football career, bro, this was only 2 years ago, meaning you should still be in good enough shape to pursue a career in football. And if you're still interested in playing, there's lots of avenues out here. There's tons of guys who've been denied opportunities time and time again, and they're still out here grinding. They didn't know anybody in the compliance department and they could never get to Kansas in the first place, even though a lot of them have had enough talent to be there. So my advice would be to take a page out of their books and continue to do whatever it takes to make your dream come true. So with all of that said, how much of Caperton's story do you believe? Do you believe the situation played out exactly as he described it? Or do you believe the heightened sense of danger that he was feeling was mostly just in his head? Regardless of which version of the story you subscribe to, don't let that stop you from subscribing to the Flimlow Raps YouTube channel. I drop interesting videos every single week.
That was a good video.
Football stuff that's not